That reading from John's Gospel, John chapter 6, it contains two, I suppose, of the more famous of the incidents in Jesus' life, feeding the 5,000 and walking on the water. In the context of the whole of John's account of the life of Jesus, what John wants to tell us through these different moments is that Jesus is the most important person in all of history, that there's no one like him, and that every single person, whoever they are, wherever they're coming from, needs to grapple with Jesus, become clear on who he is. I think John would say agree with John about who he is, and have their lives changed. And if that is what John is doing as he's writing this gospel, then it's possible that we're hearing this, and we're thinking about those two moments, the feeding of the 5,000 and walking on water, a bit like those adverts you see on social media, which you know are going to be clickbait. You know that when you click on them, they won't deliver what they claim to be offering, but they make the most extravagant claims. And as soon as you go into them, you find, A, what they're offering isn't as free, as easy to get hold of as they at first offered, and the actual product that's being pushed your way isn't as life-transforming as it made out to be. It's possible that when we hear John making these claims about how extravagantly important and good Jesus is, we hear it in that kind of way. We're suspicious, in other words, of whether Jesus is as wonderful as John makes out. And these two moments, I think, might give us particular reason to be suspicious of the claims that John is making about Jesus Christ. The feeding of the 5,000, the point of it really is that if you come to Jesus Christ, you will be welcomed into the most extravagant, extraordinary banquet, feast that goes beyond your wildest dreams. We've had a few weddings here at the Old Church over the past few days. It's been a long time coming that we've been able to celebrate in any numbers together. And so gathering together again and enjoying a meal, something that, 18 months ago was just one of the sort of things you almost took for granted, suddenly becomes the most precious and beautiful and wonderful thing with family and friends. Jesus is saying, John is claiming about Jesus here, that if you come to Jesus Christ, what you experience in those moments of gathering with family and friends is like a small echo of the feast, of the banquet that Jesus Christ wants to welcome you into. The way the story is told, for the original listeners, I think, there's a bit of comedy about it. That there are these 5,000 people, 5,000 men and probably women and children as well, who haven't got any lunch with them at all. And the only thing they can find is one boy's packed lunch. And even the packed lunch itself, we talk about 5 loaves and 2 fish, is probably something like 5 barley biscuits. And barley, which John mentions here, was the food of the poor. So this is some poor boy who's been given this by his mum to take for lunch. The only guy in the whole crowd that's got any food. All the disciples know what's going on. This is ridiculous. There's no possible way that this small poor boy's lunch is going to feed everyone here. And yet, did you hear that detail in verse 10? They present this to Jesus, this simple fact. There's no way this is going to work. Jesus said in verse 10, make the people sit down. He starts playing the host. He said, look, we've got a nice patch of ground here. Get everyone sat down where they are. A few weeks ago, we treated my father-in-law, which was 70th birthday earlier in the year, to a picnic concert in Blenheim Palace. And it was probably the most English thing I've ever been to. We were in the grounds of Winston Churchill's ancestral home. There was a Spitfire flying through the sky. Elgar's Nimrod was being played for us by the orchestra, and then someone shouted out, Harry Kane's just scored against Ukraine. The most English moment you could experience. Now, the thing is, we'd all brought our picnic. We were in the middle of this field. There were probably about, 3,000 of us, not 5,000. If we had brought no lunch between us, and some little boy piped up, I've got a few biscuits here, we'd all laugh them out. We just got to go and find the nearest McDonald's or whatever. Not Jesus. He said, get everyone to sit down. We're sorted here. And that moment is, if you like, the kind of where this extravagant banquet Jesus lays out for these 5,000 people who've all forgotten their lunch. Throughout John's Gospel, what we see Jesus Christ doing is providing these extravagant moments of welcome and hospitality. In the midst of a wedding in chapter 2, he provides liters, gallons, bottles and bottles and bottles of the very best wine that the people there had ever drunk. Here, he provides enough food to feed this enormous crowd, as much as they wanted, and there's still food left over. Now, I think this probably does sound to some of us like the sort of clickbait headlines you see on Facebook. I just before coming here, checked on my Facebook to see the sort of things that are claimed. Turbocharge your productivity and unlock your potential. I see that on my Facebook feed and I say, come on, you can't really do that for me. A database journal you'll actually use, $147 down to $27. Come on. I know if I click on that headline, there'll be more I'll find out. I have to sign up in some way and it's not actually going to give me what it offers. But John thinks that these moments of extravagant provision that Jesus does in the gospel, particularly here, really is a pointer to the way that he can meet the very deepest needs of every single person here today and throughout the world. This extravagant provision really is speaking not about some kind of, image that Jesus wants to present, but of the deepest reality of who he is. One of the things that John says in his gospel, that John perceives about Jesus, is that Jesus is the creator of this whole cosmos, this whole universe. He's the creator stepping into his creation. And if that claim is true, then he is basically the source of all life living amongst us. And if that is true, then what he can offer us, well, is the very life, the very sort of root and sap of life for which we were made. C.S. Lewis, some years ago, in a sermon he preached in Oxford, put it like this: "It would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition, when infinite joy is offered us. Like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum, because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased." And what Lewis is not saying there is that those things, drink and sex and ambition and so on, are sort of a waste of time or nothing. He's recognizing that they are some of the very best things we enjoy in our lives. But he says they're too small. If we sort of fix on them and think that they, or things like them, amount to the meaning and purpose of life, we've missed out on infinite joy. Infinite joy from the source of all joy. Life and sustenance from the source of all life and sustenance. And if that sounds too good to be true, well, I think John wants to say it is so good because it is the ultimate thing that is true about all of reality. Jesus isn't just another guy seeking to make headlines, seeking to get you to click on him and see where it leads. If he's the source of all life, if he's the creator stepping into his creation, this isn't an empty claim. But what about the hidden cost? You click on the headline and you find out that it's not what it seems to be, but there's also a cost that they didn't tell you about at first. Well, here's what's so interesting about this account. John's gospel here. It doesn't make the cost at all. And in fact, we see it in the little boy's lunch. Because there's a moment in the story where Jesus takes the boy's lunch from him. The one guy who's brought lunch to the party, one guy who's brought the lunch to the picnic, Jesus has it. And for at least a moment, no one has any lunch. Now, why does that happen? Why does Jesus take this little boy's lunch at the sort of start of the miracle? Well, I think in a strange way it is explained by the second moment Jesus walking on the water. Because when Jesus walks on the water, it's not that, and I guess this is how we might often think of it, that he does this sort of magic trick. Look at me gliding across the waves, impressing you all with, how brilliant I am at kind of surfing without any wind or whatever. What Jesus is doing when he walks on the water, well, did you hear? The disciples only get afraid, not when there's the storm that they're in the middle of, but when they see Jesus walking on the waves. And the point of that, I think, is that they realize, likely these disciples, sort of hardened fishermen who knew the Sea of Galilee where this was all happening well, they have this moment of realizing that this Sea of Galilee, which was a pretty stormy place, storms could kind of rise up in a moment, they're encountering someone who is more powerful than that very storm that they're in the middle of. The storm that they can kind of, get to grips with, here is someone who's bigger than it. One of the many things that Donald Trump thought about doing, apparently, when he was president, was firing nuclear weapons into hurricanes. It was claimed, at least by some in his administration, that this was never really a serious idea. But it was taken so seriously that some congressmen produced a bill to ban firing nuclear weapons into hurricanes. Now, the reason, apparently, that this was sort of mooted as an idea is because if we fire nukes into hurricanes, the thinking goes, we'll be able to kind of destabilize the hurricane and reduce it in its power. Now, plenty of scientists kind of went onto the news saying that there's no way that could work, because a hurricane produces the equivalent energy of a 10 megaton bomb every 20 minutes. I didn't know what a 10 megaton bomb is. It's 600 times the power of the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. Every 20 minutes, a hurricane produces that kind of energy. But of course, a hurricane on Earth is as nothing compared to, say, a hurricane or the equivalent of a hurricane in the sun, a solar flare. The moment when the sun sort of develops a storm is equivalent to millions of 100 megaton bombs. And our sun is just a fairly small star. Other stars are billions of times more powerful. And scientists reckon that there are about 40 of the most powerful stars exploding in our universe every second. If Jesus Christ is the creator of the universe, at this moment stepping in to his creation, then what these disciples see, someone more powerful than a storm, than a hurricane, than a solar flare, than 40 supernovae blowing up right now and now and now and now. If that's who Jesus is, then is he really going to just step into your life as an advisor? Someone to kind of draw alongside you and give you a pep talk every now and then if you're feeling a bit down? Is he going to be someone who'll just be a kind of comfort blanket for you? Or would it not be the case that you would encounter him and he'd say, give me your lunch, give me everything that you are, because I am so far beyond you and above you, you cannot comprehend my power. You can't just have me as a sort of friend who, gives you a G up every now and then. He's going to demand all of your life. Coming to him is going to involve learning to live in a totally different way with someone like this at the center of your reality, with someone like this calling the shots. He doesn't just demand your lunch, he demands every single part of you. Now, perhaps at this point we're just thinking, well, who does Jesus think he is to demand that place in my life? Who does he think he is coming in and saying, I want your lunch and I want all of you? He might be that powerful, but I'm not sure I want that kind of power, pushing in on my life right now. Which is why it's so extraordinary in our account and in the whole of John's Gospel the way that Jesus, John thinks, uses all of that power. We get a little hint in our reading. I wonder if you heard it. When the crowd saw this amazing sign of the feeding the 5,000, understandably, I guess, they think that Jesus is something special. Verse 14 says, after the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world. For these first hearers, the prophet is the man that God was sending to make the whole world right again. This is someone special, in other words. But then verse 15, Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. There is a moment in this story when you don't get people saying, I don't want you, Jesus. I'll keep you at a distance, thanks. You get at least 5,000 people saying, no, I'll do whatever you say. I see you have power. I see you're someone important. Be our king. Now, we're ready to crown you right now. And Jesus walks away. He doesn't want to know. Why is that? Well, through the rest of the gospel, what we see about Jesus Christ is he isn't someone who's going to use this extraordinary power he has, if you like, to beat you into submission. He's not going to use it to force his rule on your life. Perhaps the most extraordinary thing we see right at the heart of John's account of Jesus is the way that Jesus is going to use his power, the way that in fact he's going to become king, is by giving all that power away. He won't be made king by force by me or you or anyone. His coronation in John's gospel, it's almost ironic, his coronation is being strung up on a cross. The extraordinary thing at the heart of Christianity is this one who has so much power beyond any of our ability to grasp, doesn't use it to force himself upon us, but to give his life for us. His power is most extraordinary at the full service of his love. If you've ever experienced someone with great strength, going out of their way to serve you, you'll have, I guess, a little sort of taste of what this looks like. Someone who, for nothing but love, lays down their life for you, goes out of their way to serve you. That's, John says, that is what Jesus Christ does for people like us. And that's why, in the end, he doesn't coerce us into giving us our lives. But when you see the deep, deep, deep extent of his love for you, that he's willing to lay down his life for you, put all of his power to serve you, then maybe, just maybe, like that boy, you'll say, take my lunch, take all that I am. You're someone I can trust. You're someone I can follow. Well, let's be quiet for just a few moments, and then Nick will come and lead us in the rest of our service.